My mom said I was the dumb one and she was going to make sure I stayed that way. And I want to tell you about the 11 years between when she said it and when she found out what I had been doing, because the 11 years were where I figured out that the way to escape my mother was not to prove her wrong, but to leave the room she had been describing me from. The sentence was said when I was 17. I had been getting my SAT scores. I had scored a 1,490. The 1,490 had been higher than my older sister Mira had scored. Mira was the smart one in our family. Mira had always been the smart one. Mira had been the smart one because my mother had decided when we were children that there was a smart one and a dumb one. The decision had been made when I was about 6. The decision had not been adjusted in 11 years. My mother had been making comments about my intelligence since I was a child. My mother had been telling me I was good with my hands. My mother had been telling me I should consider hairdressing. My mother had been the parent who had not signed me up for the gifted program in 3rd grade, despite my 3rd grade teacher recommending it. My mother had been the parent who had told my high school guidance counselor that I was not college material. The 1,490 happened despite all of this. The 1,490 happened because I had been studying secretly for 2 years. I had been borrowing SAT prep books from the library. I had been doing them in my bedroom. I had been hiding them. I came home with the score. I showed it to my mother. My mother was at the kitchen table. My mother said, "This is good for you. You must have gotten lucky." I said, "It was not luck. I have been studying." My mother said, "For how long?" I said, "For 2 years." My mother said, "Okay." My mother sat with the paper. Then she said, "Let me tell you something, honey. You are the dumb one. You have always been the dumb one. Your sister is the smart one. This is how it has always been. A test score does not change that. I am going to make sure you stay the dumb one because the dumb one is what you are. Do not get any ideas." I think about the way she said it. The way she called me honey first. Like the word honey was supposed to soften what came next. The way she was not yelling. She was explaining. She was telling me what I was the way you tell someone the weather. The calm was the part that cut the deepest because the calm meant she believed it. I sat with what my mother had said. I went up to my bedroom. I called my high school guidance counselor on her cell phone. The counselor was a woman named Mrs. Adelina. Mrs. Adelina said, "Come to my office tomorrow morning. We are going to figure this out." I went to Mrs. Adelina's office the next morning. Mrs. Adelina pulled out a folder that was about an inch thick. She turned it toward me. She said, "I want you to see something. Your mother came to my office last year. She sat in the chair you are sitting in right now. She told me not to encourage you. She told me you were not college material. She told me I should steer you toward vocational programs." Mrs. Adelina pointed at the folder. I wrote it down. I have been writing everything down. I looked at the folder and there were pages of notes going back 2 years. Dates. Direct quotes. My mother had called my math teacher in sophomore year and told her I had a learning disability that had never been diagnosed and to please go easy on me. My mother had told the front office that I should not be placed in any advanced classes because I had anxiety and could not handle the pressure. None of this was true. Mrs. Adelina had been collecting all of it because Mrs. Adelina had seen what was happening and she had been waiting for me to see it too. She said, "I could not say anything to you until you were ready. You are ready now. We are going to get you out of here." That was the moment I understood that I was not crazy. I had spent years wondering if maybe my mother was right. The doubt got a lot smaller in that moment. We started working. I could not work on applications at home because my mother went through my things. So every application, every essay draft, every piece of financial aid paperwork, all of it lived in Mrs. Adelina's office. I told my mother I had joined the yearbook committee. I had not joined the yearbook committee. I was in Mrs. Adelina's office writing essays. Mrs. Adelina set up her office address as the mailing address for every school. There was a close call about 6 weeks in. I had been working on an essay late at night and I printed a draft on the family printer at 2 in the morning. I put the draft in my backpack. The next day I came home and my mother was sitting at the kitchen table. She had my backpack open in front of her. She was holding the essay. She read the first line out loud. She said, "Who told you to write about this?" I said, "It is for English class." My mother read a few more lines. She said, "It sounds like you are trying to be someone you are not." I took the essay back. I said, "It is just a class assignment." She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, "Okay." She let it go. But if she had read 2 more paragraphs, she would have found the name of a university in the text. She would have known. After that, I did not bring anything home. Then the letters started coming. I had applied to 12 schools. 9 were acceptances. Mrs. Adelina sat across from me and she said, "You did this, not me. You. The scores were yours. The essays were yours. All of it is yours." I picked a top 50 liberal arts college in a different state that had offered me a near full scholarship. I told my mother I was leaving on the day after my high school graduation. My mother said, "You are making a fool of yourself. You are going to waste that scholarship money." I kept packing. My mother took my suitcase out to the driveway and put it behind her car. I came downstairs and saw it was gone. I walked outside. I picked up the suitcase. I put it in my car. My mother stood in the driveway. She said, "You are going to come crawling back and I am going to say I told you so." I looked at her and I said, "Maybe. We will see." I got in the car. I drove away. I watched her get smaller in the rearview mirror. I did not cry until I was on the highway. I cried for about 20 minutes. Then I stopped. Then I drove. I arrived at college in August. The first night I lay in bed and I could hear other students laughing in the hallway, and I thought maybe my mother was right. Maybe I would fail. Then the next morning I went to my first economics lecture. The professor was talking about supply and demand curves, and I sat in the 3rd row and I understood every single word. Not just understood. I was ahead of it. I sat in that lecture hall for 50 minutes, and when it was over, I called Mira. It was the first time I had called anyone in my family since I left. I said, "I understood everything today." Mira said, "Of course you did. I want you to hear that. Of course you did." That was the first time anyone in my family had said of course about my intelligence. Like it was obvious. Like the only person who had not seen it was the person who had been deciding the labels. I held the phone against my ear. For the first time in my life, the ground under my feet felt like mine. The years moved. I graduated summa cum laude with a 3.94. I was inducted into Phi Beta Kappa. I was accepted into a doctoral program in economics. I started therapy. The therapy is where the real work happened. My therapist was a woman named Nora. In the beginning, I talked about my mother the way you talk about a natural disaster. Then one Tuesday, Nora said, "Tell me about your grandmother." So we looked. The picture that came together was this. My grandmother Blake Blakely had done the same thing to her children that my mother had done to us. Blakely had picked a smart one and a dumb one. My mother Aubrey had been the dumb one. My mother had been told she was not book smart. My mother had carried the label for her entire life. She had been so wounded by it that she had done the only thing she knew how to do with the wound, which was pass it on. Nora said, "This does not excuse what she did. Understanding is not the same as forgiving, but understanding lets you put it down." There was a night near the end of my PhD that I need to tell you about. I had just defended my dissertation. The dissertation had won a prize from my professional association, and then the ceremony was over, and I drove back to my apartment, and I sat on my couch in the dark, and I was alone with the biggest accomplishment of my life, and there was nobody in my apartment to tell. I picked up my phone. I scrolled to my mother's number. I had never deleted it. I dialed. It rang once. It rang twice. I hung up. I called Nora instead. Nora picked up even though it was late. I said, "I almost called my mother." Nora said, "What were you going to say to her?" I said, "I was going to tell her I won." Nora said, "Why?" I said, "Because I wanted her to know she was wrong." Nora said, "Is that the same as wanting her to know who you are?" I sat with that. I said, "No, it is not the same." That was the night I understood something I had not understood before. Proving my mother wrong was still living inside my mother's framework. It was still using her labels as the measuring stick. The goal was not to prove anything. The goal was to be free. And being free meant the phone call to tell her I won was not actually about me. It was about her. It was about needing her to see. And I did not want to need that anymore. During those years, Mira called me regularly. One night, Mira sounded tired. She said, "Being the smart one is not what you think it is. Being the smart one means I am not allowed to fail. I am not allowed to struggle. Mom calls me every week and asks about my career. She tells people about my job like it belongs to her. She says at least I have one smart daughter. You escaped the label. I am still wearing mine. 2 daughters, 2 labels, both of us damaged by the same system. Neither of us had gotten out clean." Then Mira called. It was a Tuesday night. Mira said, "I have to tell you something. I told Mom about you, about your career, about your PhD." I put the spoon down on the counter. Mira said, "I had been keeping it private because you asked me to. I know it was not my decision to make, but I told her last week and I need you to know why. She has been telling people for 11 years that you are a failure. She has been telling people you ran away. She has been telling people you are probably homeless. Last week she told the neighbors. She was standing in the front yard talking to them and she said you were probably on the street somewhere, and she laughed when she said it. She laughed. I could not stand there and listen to her tell people that lie one more time, so I told her. I was angry at Mira. I had spent 11 years building a careful distance and Mira had just knocked it down without asking me, but I also understood why she did it. 11 years of saying nothing while someone tells lies about your sister. I said, "What did she do when you told her?" Mira said, "She did not believe me at first. She said you are making this up." So I took out my phone. I pulled up your faculty page. I showed her your photo. I showed her your title. I showed her your publications. She took the phone out of my hand. Then I pulled up your CV, the full one. She sat down at the kitchen table. She read everything for an hour. Then she cried. She has not cried in years, but she sat at that table and she put her hands over her face and she cried. She said she wants to talk to you. I said, "Okay, let me think." I called Nora the next morning. Nora said, "I want you to think about what you actually want from this conversation. Do you want an apology? Do you want acknowledgement? Do you want a relationship? Each of those requires a different conversation." I said, "I want her to stop lying about me, and I want her to understand what she did and why she did it." Nora said, "That is 2 things. The first one you can demand. The second one she has to choose." I spent 2 weeks deciding. During those 2 weeks, Mira called me. Mira sounded different on the second call. She said, "Mom told Blakely." You know what Blakely said? Blakely said, "Well, I guess the dumb one fooled everyone." I sat with that sentence. The dumb one fooled everyone. Blakely was still using the label after 60 years. My grandmother was 80 years old and she was still calling her daughter the dumb one, and now she was using it on me too, like it was a family heirloom being passed down. The cycle was still running. Blakely was still turning the crank. The only person who had gotten out was me, and only because I had left. That was when my resolve got clear. I was not going to let Blakely's 5 words be the last thing said about me and my family. I picked up the phone. I dialed my mother's number. It rang 3 times. She picked up. There was a breath, and then my mother said, "Honey." I said, "Mom." Neither of us said anything for a while. The silence was big, and it was full of 11 years. Then my mother said, "Mira told me." I said, "I know." I had not called to let the silence do the talking. I knew what I wanted. I said, "Mom, I want to ask you something. Do you remember what you said to me 11 years ago at the kitchen table, the day I showed you my SAT score?" She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Yes." I said, "Tell me what you said." She did not answer right away. I waited. This was hers to say. Finally, she said, "I told you you were the dumb one." She paused. "I told you I would make sure you stayed that way." The words came through the phone and I let them sit. I did not respond right away. This time she had to hear what they sounded like from the outside. Then I said, "I have been refusing to be the dumb one. I left the room you had been describing me from. I have a PhD. I am a professor at a research university. I have been doing well. I am not telling you this to prove I am smart. I am telling you this because you have been telling people for 11 years that I am homeless and struggling and a failure. I want you to stop. I want you to tell every person you told that lie to that you were wrong." I could hear her crying, quiet crying. I said, "I am also going to tell you something you do not know that I know. I have figured out why you said what you said to me. Your mother said it to you." Blakely looked at her children and she picked a smart one and a dumb one and she picked you as the dumb one. You have been carrying that for 60 years. You have been the dumb one in your own family your whole life, and you put it on me because you needed to put it somewhere. You passed it down because it was the only thing you knew how to do with it. I paused. Then I said, "I am giving it back. It is yours. It was always yours. It is yours to figure out. I am not going to carry it anymore." My mother cried harder. Then she said, "I am sorry. I had not called for an apology." I said, "I am not asking for an apology. I am asking you to do work. Real work. The kind you do with a therapist in a room every week for a long time. The work is yours. I am willing to be in contact with you while you do the work. I am not willing to be in contact with you if you do not." I had said what I came to say. I had not yelled. I had not begged. I had not proven anything. I had just handed her back what had never been mine and told her the door was open if she wanted to walk through it on the right terms. times. Aubrey went to therapy. She has been in therapy for 2 years now. She has been making specific apologies. Not the general I am sorry kind, but the specific kind where she calls the people she lied to and tells them she was wrong about her daughter. Mira has confirmed this. Aubrey and I are in contact now. The contact is on my terms. We talk every few weeks. We are not close. We may never be, but we are working. The working is enough. I think about it sometimes, about how I did not escape my mother by proving I was smart. I escaped by leaving the room she had been describing me from, and then I held the door open, just enough for her to walk out of that room too.